Hi, everybody. Welcome to our MCU 11 Marvel Rewatch Re-rank live stream on Tuesday this week instead of Monday. Hope everyone had a good Valentine's Day or whatever you celebrate on that day. We're talking Iron Man 3 tonight. Got Rory and Chad as always, and Donut tonight, special guest Donut.
Hey! How's it going, guys? Hey!
So start with initial thoughts, like where do you have this originally, and then where do you have it now? Maybe?
I think I really think this was like the start of like the shift because Shane Black is just like unapologetically in this movie, and like there have been better MCU movies after,
Right.
but I feel like it didn't feel like what an Marvel Cinematic Universe movie feels like kind of now. It's one of those last vestiges of like originality. I also really love like unless I'm mistaken, instead of playing that Marvel horn during the red flipping cover thing, it's the music. It's the Blue Dot Lisa.
That's true. Yeah, it opens with that. And a voiceover. I think it's the only voiceover we get that I can think of in a Marvel movie. Intro and outro.
Also, the Marvel Studios intro comes before Paramount now. Prior to that, it had been flipped.
Right. Yeah.
And Paramount was first.
This is starting to win. It's the last times it's like, oh yeah, Marvel Studios is like a real big, huge thing now. They're one of the major players.
Yeah.
You think, right?
I think originally I felt that this was the best movie other than the Avengers. Like I feel like I felt originally that this one beat out all the others other than like, I don't want to say like their nostalgia, but like the first Iron Man was the first one, so it had a lot of it earned a lot of points for being the first. Captain America was like the best origin story, so that earns a lot of points. But like for just being a straight comic book movie, I feel like this was the best one for me when I originally watched it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I had it that high on my original listing. I have to look it up, but it's my number one now.
Number one, as in out of all the ones you've seen so far?
Yeah, out of the first, 6 movies.
Yeah, this is like what? Still the first third, I think, right?
Yeah.
So it's the first one of phase 2, right?
Right, yeah.
Last week. Yeah. So they start phase 2 strong. So this is I didn't write a lot of things down in my notes, but I did write down that Tony calls the kid a pussy, which is great. And I don't know if they're allowed to do that in Marvel movies after this.
That is really good.
Black things.
I didn't mention it earlier, but I had this movie in the like right around the middle of my list.
Right.
Originally, rewatching it, it's the Iron Man movie that I've seen the least, I believe. And right now I have this right in the middle of my list again. But it's in the middle of the list, and I like it a lot better than I remember liking it.
Right. Yeah, it reminds me that a thing that when I saw it originally in 2013, I remember at the end when he blows up all the suits for love, for his love of a woman. I remember thinking, oh, that's dumb. Like a man's going to destroy his life's work for this woman. And it hit me very differently this time. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. You get to make sacrifices for the people that you love and things like that. And it's because you can tell who I was dating in 2013 and how I felt about that relationship. That's how I feel about my relationship now.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I feel like I think maybe like a few years ago I did watch it, and I watched one of these YouTubers talk about it, and they're like, why it's out of character for Tony to be like, you know, not getting out of harm's way. And what the YouTuber failed to mention was that as he's driving, he's like he's repentant. He's like, look, I fucked up. Wait, is this a PG-13 like stream? Can we swear?
No. We're on Twitch and stuff, so you can't show your bare genitals or anything. But
No nips.
language-wise, go for it.
You can
But
talk
yeah.
about your genitals, but
Yeah.
it's the opposite of show and tell.
Yeah.
I really like that he's like, look, I fucked up, and I don't know. I had the same revelation you had. How he's like, kind of owning it. And I was like, all right, like this is like it's the adult thing to mess up. It's the cool thing to be like, all right, now I'm gonna fix it, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's definitely it's the third movie in the trilogy where he's going to have to go through these changes and mature and be a better person for it. So doing things that are out of character like that's exactly what it's supposed to be happening at this point in the story.
Yeah, it's not so much out of character so much as character growth.
Yeah.
When I think too, like what I got out of it this time, and I was already upfront with David before we started watching this, started the stream. When I watched it this last time, I might have been very drunk, so I might have gotten different things out of it than the first couple of times that I watched it. But the thing that I got more out of it this time was the like how the PTSD was really affecting him, not just in the rash decisions he was making, but in like the fact that all of the suits that he had made were a symptom of that, where he had been throwing himself into the work. So it wasn't just that he was destroying his work for his love, but it was also the symbolic thing of like, this thing that I did to protect myself, I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
And that hit me harder this time.
Yeah, I just kind of recognizing that and saying how he's dealing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely more layers to this. I didn't realize watching it that first time.
I'm kind of, and I know I'm spoiling it. If anybody watching your show has been keeping up, but with how things eventually ended up coming, like it's like, and how the technology like eventually like just grew and outpaced itself like that. I was like, it kind of robbed this movie of its thunder, Like I don't think we got to live in that area of where like Tony is okay with leaving that part of him behind, or at least like grappling with it, right? We don't get to see the meaty after parts.
Yeah, it's weird that this movie's kind of like it's a good ending to the Iron Man story, but then Iron Man's story continues for like 8 more movies. So,
8 more.
Very strange, or however many it is.
No, that sounds right.
I think that's true, and it's definitely funny. But like, I guess part of me thinks that, or feels like, up until this movie, the Iron Man has been a tool where he's doing it to protect himself and to bolster his own ego. And after this is where he's not putting on the Iron Man suit because he wants to. He's doing it because he has to for others. Right. And that's like his first step to being heroic, is that, but everything else that he's done has been on the like, well, if I don't stop the aliens, my house gets blown up.
Right.
But after this, it was he could hand off the Iron Man suit to someone else. He knows he doesn't want to. The reason why he keeps doing it is because he's a hero now. Right. So I thought, I think that's cool that they did that in this story.
Yeah, because you get to see that here at the end of the Iron Man series of movies, where it's like, because every other time we see him, you spend most of the movie being like, Tony, you gotta step up and like take care of other people and things, and like he just enters the final battle of the movie because they're coming. These bad guys are always coming at him, so he's defending himself. But he's protecting everybody, but it's because he has to. It's like it's right there in his face.
It's
as
because
opposed
it's him.
Right. As opposed to like where Thor has to like make a sacrifice to save the frost giant people, and Captain America's, he sacrifices himself in the way that he does. Tony's always been kind of like, he's being forced to be the hero at the end of the movie. And after this, he's not. He's making that choice. It just kind of shows that growth of his character.
And it's like, even when he's not being forced to be the hero, like, I feel like in Iron Man 2, like Iron Man 3 made me appreciate Iron Man 2 in a different way, where it's not just about, or he's only a hero when he's forced to, or when it serves him well to do so. Like, it's easy to be Iron Man when you know nobody can get through the iron suit.
Right.
It's a lot harder to do it when somebody can melt through it. So
I do agree that after this movie, it's a significant change in the way that Tony treats being Iron Man. However, I would argue with the whole not forced to thing, because he still has to become Iron Man in all of the subsequent movies that he's in, or most of the subsequent movies that he's in, because he caused the problem.
Right.
Like, he's still the source of more than half the problems in the MCU.
Yeah, that's true. Like, he makes
instead of waiting for the problems that he created to come back to haunt him, he's actively hunting down the problems.
He's taking that responsibility to try to solve the problems that he's created.
Yeah, but he's still making the problems.
Right.
Growth doesn't happen overnight, Chad. It doesn't even happen over the course of a subsequent 6 films.
It's a long time. 15 years, or however long it took.
Watching this actually made me want to watch Civil War again. And I like parts of these movies, but Civil War was always one of those things where it's like, oh man, like, I wish it were a little bigger or a little more tighter. It was just in the middle for me. And I never understood. And again, maybe it's because I didn't rewatch Civil War like I rewatched Iron Man 3, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I kind of get it now with what you're saying, Chad, because he's taking responsibility again, and like that's totally a result of this movie. Like, the growth, like, really leapt off from here, and that's why he was like, no, like, we should be accountable. We should do this. Like, we should be with the government, and they should like be able to put sanctions on us. Like, I kind of get it now. I still don't agree with it, but I kind of get it.
Right.
Well, and I think too, like, and I think this is like the power of having one studio and one creative team in charge of all of the movies, is that if you're an irresponsible person and all of a sudden you start being like, no, I'm going to man up and take responsibility, and the first thing that I'm going to do is solve some of my things, not all of them, just some of them, and then strongly point the finger at everybody else around me that needs to do the exact same thing and take care of their stuff. That's like a natural progression, right? So like, when he's like that in Civil War, it's like, oh, you're going through a growth thing and you haven't gotten to the point where you're starting to look at it from other people's side. You're just on that strong authoritarian, like, we all got to solve our problem. So I think that was cool how you can see I think it's cool how you can see the character growth from one movie go into another movie that has nothing to do with that particular character, but it's still the same character growth. Like, even looking back at it, like the opening thing of Captain America in the first Avengers, or the Avengers, is he's not already working at S.H.I.E.L.D. He only has a new version of his old suit. So like, watching the natural progression of like, he's just got to our time. He's starting to realize that a lot of the values that he fought for aren't common values anymore. And watching how he starts veering away from S.H.I.E.L.D., it makes total sense how he's doing it but it was from the first scene when he came back to our time, is that he's still standing for, what's right, but like he's not
Right. Yeah.
an agent of Shield, right?
Right. Because Shield isn't necessarily the same thing. That's
Yeah.
because that's something I wanted to talk about. How in this movie, it's crazy that the vice president is behind, or at least part of this conspiracy, where an international terrorist is carrying out suicide bombings across the U.S. and tries to kill the president. And how, like we saw in Avengers, there's this whole weird shadowy group of international leaders that are actually in charge of everything.
Mm-hmm.
How, like, that's a crazy thing that's going on in the world that doesn't get a lot of spotlighting. It happens in the movies, but we don't really think about how this is the world that everybody's living in here. Well, actually, I think the U.S. government doesn't really have any power or anything like that. It's Power's booth and all these other people, holograms.
I mean,
Yeah, so those American values that Captain America stood for, they're not even, whose values are they anymore?
right. I just want to brief time out and say I feel like our world might be run a little bit better if we had holograms deciding everything.
Wait, how long do you think it's going to be before we have an NFT president? By 2050, the president will be an NFT.
Well, I feel like Biden's really close to a life model decoy, so not that far.
Yeah,
Not that far.
he's so old. I mean, someone's going to have to have someone. It's going to happen to somebody, probably.
Can you imagine that? Like, run by an algorithm. Like, geez.
Yeah.
It works for Hala.
For who?
Kree Homeworld.
Kree Homeworld.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, they turned
Like
out okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we got a world mine and it looked like Annette Bening, and I'm just saying I'm halfway there already.
I think, well, as a last tag, I feel like the MCU never really gave room for that, right? Because the peripheral shows didn't really get to explore that. But I feel like I really hope because there's still always going to be shadowy stuff going on,
right?
In the big picture kind of way. And one of the things I like about the Disney Plus MCU shows are they seem to be like from way different angles from everyone, from each other even, and getting a glimpse of that, like, because I feel like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted to kind of be that, but it wasn't, like to explore that.
I think that they wanted to explore a lot of the things that were going on with the MCU, the wider universe of it, but they were told that they're not allowed to affect any kind of changes.
You can't make things canon.
Only the movies get to say when things happen.
And I feel like that's the downside of the TV MCU is that they treated that like they sent it out to die a couple of times instead of treating it like what it feels like they're doing now, where they're really incorporating it within the MCU. So I'm hopeful that all changes.
Yeah.
Because like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like I know there's problems with it, but on a whole, like I really enjoyed like the breadth of the world building that they were doing. That like I don't know if anybody else has ever read the comics with the Flag Smashers in them, but they are stupid lame in the comics, and they actually made them something really cool in the MCU. So, like the Flag Smashers are treated like a Cobra Commander-esque joke, They're like half the time it's like Spider-Man stops them on the way to what the real plot is, like of his story, where it's just like a throwaway gag. Yeah.
Because for people that don't know the Flag Smashers, like, what's their deal? Aside from that,
I learned about them after watching Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then realizing, oh look, they have all this history. Like, well, I say history, right? History.
Right.
But it was I never really I didn't read any comics that had featured them or had them because like Rory said, like they're just a blip.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just somebody gave a name to the random thug that's robbing a bank at the beginning of the the story.
Which, I mean, in comics, that's one of my favorite things is like when they're like, we just need some stupid villain to like hold open, and then they make up something, and then like it becomes its own running gag of like the stupid thing that they've done. So watching the MCU take those stupid things and turn it into something else is like, oh man, they really do read all of these comics. This is insane.
Yeah, I heard they have like there's some database where they have like everyone who's ever been named is like in there somewhere, so they can look up just one random person that was in one issue or something. They can bring them back as an Easter egg or whatever.
Oh.
Yeah, some nerd has probably put that together.
It's on a wiki somewhere.
Yeah, it's got to be. But I wanted to ask you guys:
does the nerd work for them or not?
Yeah.
And if not, why not? So one of the things, well, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about is all things that happen around, after, prior to this movie. But
I was very drunk, Chad.
One of the things that I wanted to mention with this movie is it feels very much like the third movie in a trilogy. Like it's making so many callbacks to prior things that have happened. And like the entire idea of bringing the 10 Rings back, which was like the original bad guys of the first movie, it's a very Indiana Jonesy kind of move, I feel like. It's just like, oh yeah, we did something else in the second movie, but let's go back to that first one that everyone liked.
Yeah.
But there's that at the end when they do the narration of all of the things that happen after the end of the movie, like it felt like watching those old 80s movies where it has a little blurb on the bottom of the screen that says what happened to this character when they grow up.
Well, it's like if you watch Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2, the last one in the series, they do something similar where they show every single character from all of the movies. And I've only seen the last one, so it didn't make any sense to me.
Wait, you didn't watch? If you ever decide to do a stream of that, like, let me know. That'd be fun to dive in with you. It's only like 5 movies.
Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't remember, during the pandemic, I did a thing where I was putting movies up against each other for people to vote on, and whoever lost would get permadeath. And I would never, ever watch them for my whole life. And I did a whole thing with Kristen Stewart movies going one by one against the Twilight movies. And they all
the movies all lost until you put Twilight versus Twilight.
Yeah.
Breaking Dawn versus Breaking Dawn Part 2.
And I just have to figure it all out from there.
It was the better one.
Yeah. Have you guys watched the Multiverse of Madness trailer? Amy Chibi wants to know, and I don't.
No,
I did not.
I have not seen the newest Spider-Man, and I've been hiding for every time anything pops up. I get to see it this week, so
I'm very excited for you to be able to watch that. The new Multiverse of Madness trailer is not the same.
I know it's not, but like anytime anything shows up with a Marvel person in it, I immediately like cover my ears, close my eyes, and start making noises until someone tells me it's okay.
That's a pretty good policy.
Yeah. Yeah, because like there's the first part of it is like I don't want any hint of a spoiler, and the second part is if when these movies are coming out, I get so excited, and then I can't immediately like see them. So like it's like my excitement goes high, and then my disappointment goes high, and it's just like a constant like.
Right. Just want to kind of go in blank.
Yeah.
I don't know. I did not like the first Doctor Strange movie, but I haven't rewatched it, and there was just so much CGI. It turned me off, so I didn't give it a chance. So
I feel like it had a it's sort of where that formula where they kind of realize like, oh, this is how we can make these, kind of like starts to feel formulaic because it kind of looks like it's shot the same. There's a lot of CGI, but like there's like visually moments of real greatness in that film, like in all of them. And I feel like that's the roll of the dice now. Like how many moments, how many like great ideas get to shine through, and get connected to each other while not getting lost in like the action, the plot of it, you know?
Right.
Because yeah.
I was gonna jump on that too, because like I feel like a lot of times people say like the formula of it, and like I feel like it's less of a formula issue and more of a like Doctor Strange is just really hard to bring in cold. Like even in the comics, like he's a guy you go see, not the main character of most stories.
Right. It's not a guy you want to follow around all day.
Yeah. Yeah. And his standalone series, like I know it has fans, but like he's never been Spider-Man. He's never been Captain America. Like he's never been like one of the pillars of the Marvel universe, right?
Right.
And like I feel like that one was hard. Thor, same thing. If it hadn't been right now, Black Panther would have been another hard sell, just because they don't have, or the lore that they have is so different from the rest of the Marvel universe that it takes time for them to get into the mainstream. And I feel like Marvel has been really kind of I don't want to say phoning in those origin stories, but like they definitely know that's like, okay, this movie is all about just establishing this character, so we're gonna do that, and the next one's gonna be cool. And like I see why they need to do that, because like you need that Doctor Strange movie so that you can get the next one. But like he was super cool in the Infinity Saga, and that's how Doctor Strange is supposed to be used.
Yeah.
So
Doctor Strange works best as a guest star because when you have him as the main character, he's always either way too powerful or not nearly powerful enough. Like he's either kind of ineffectual and his magic can't do anything, or his magic solves every problem, and now you don't have a story anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
But as a guest star, when he says, "Oh, my magic can't solve our problems, but it can do this cool thing," then you're just like, "Oh, this is actually a much bigger problem than we thought it was."
Yeah. Is it that stakes?
Mm-hmm. And as far as that trailer goes, it's crazy. There's so much stuff in there. It's one of the first times I actually wanted to go and find a YouTuber to break down every single part of a trailer for me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's a billion people that have done that, but I've been very lazy about actually looking it up. But I want to look it up.
Yeah.
It makes me want to do that.
Well, if I'll look it up for you and I'll put it out on our Twitter at Apollo and I'll tag you in it. Oh, somebody remind me to do that because I'll forget.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure that someone made those. Someone's got to. That's
So
what YouTube is
you
full of.
remind David. I'll remind you. David will remind Chad.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We'll all know what's going on.
Speaking of trailers, this trailer was for Iron Man 3.
Mm.
Tonally did not capture the film.
Yeah.
I mean, like I remember thinking like, oh fuck, this is it. And it was like, you know, like you guys were saying, like it's the third in the trilogy. I was like, all right, this is it. This is like Iron Man's time. The poster looks really gritty, and yet like it just tonally it's not that, because it's such a balanced movie to me. Like you get to laugh and there's stakes. Like
Yeah.
like a good comic book movie should have.
Yeah, I feel like this one was like, for me, this one was them really telling me that they could take a comic book story and make it into a movie. Because like the whole thing of like who's actually the bad guy and what are they actually trying to do, and that being like a convoluted plot. Iron Man losing his armor being like it shouldn't be a thing that ever happens, but it's something that happens. Pretending to be dead because that solves problems, like that. It was such a comic book plot, and I ate that up with a spoon.
Yeah. Like a spy movie.
And I'm just gonna say, like, I feel like this was one of the best action sequences, like for Tony Stark. Is when he's attacking the guys with his homemade dart gun things.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that, where it was just like, I'm the man inside the Iron Man, and I can still build shit.
Yeah.
And then the just constantly jumping in and out of his armors as things went. Like that was one of my favorite action sequences ever. So.
Okay, so the homemade action sequence, I really love that stuff, but I remember thinking about this the first time I watched the movie, and I thought it again this time. I'm just like, this is what it would look like if Macaulay Culkin did Home Alone again, but this time he hunted the thieves stuff.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anything, we should see more about the traps and contraptions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, the multiple armor scene, like I remembered it, and I remembered it loving it, but I didn't remember the feeling that I got from it. And then watching it, like I got that feeling again where I'm just like, oh my god, this is the most insane thing ever. And I realized this was the first one of that scene. Like Avengers, like the scene where you see the Avengers all get together for the first time, and that's great.
Yeah.
Like you love it. But this, I feel like, was the first time the Marvel's just like, hey, you know what people really like? Let's just make more of that one thing and then just keep piling it on. And it's like, a well that they're going to go to several times again in the future.
Yeah. I think that putting on like my smart thoughts, I feel like this was actually, for the trilogy aspect, this was a good almost like coming of age for how he originally became Iron Man, where it was like, here, we're going to give you a bunch of parts, and he's like, I'm going to build something, you ain't going to like it, because I'm just that smart that I can do that in a cave. And in this one, it was kind of like, oh, it's not enough to have just all of these suits. I can control all of them all of the time. And like, just the amount of like, how much he had to be thinking about that to like get all of his suits to be doing everything. Like, it was, I felt like this one was very much him proving that it's like, he was solving it with his intelligence and the action, not just, I've got the coolest suit of armor.
Yeah, it's like the whole final action scene. Like you get like the CGI glue plops flying around all over the place, but instead of them being the bad guys this time, it's all the good guys. You're watching them.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah, and then they all have their own personalities, like the jackhammer suit. I thought it was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, all of the different suits were like super cool.
Yeah.
And especially like recognizing like certain ones that from the comics, like one of the first ones that he puts on during that scene is actually, I believe, that was the 80s Silver Centurion Iron Man suit.
Yeah.
Where instead of being red and gold like he's classically colored, it's red and silver.
Yeah,
I was thinking about it because this was the crowning, like it was the crowning moment of the whole movie, but like all the other action sequences in there built up to it. Like I really love the gas station scene too. And I kept thinking, I was like, there was some part where I was like, oh, Happy's like struggling for his life in a bed somewhere. And then I realized like Jon Favreau couldn't have directed this, and I think it's good that he did it. Because he started doing other Disney stuff around this time. I think it was Jungle Book must have been starting production, so he couldn't like dedicate time.
I think I read somewhere it started working on something that didn't pan out. That was like it was like Night at the Museum, but set in Disneyland, but didn't end up getting made. I think he was working on that too during the production of this. What that was called.
But yeah, like that, the gas station scene and the not gas station, but because he used gas at the end to like torch the place.
It was like a diner or a kitchen.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
One of those non-stop ones. Yeah.
And then the plane rescue.
Yeah, I really thought it was really cool. Way to catch all the people in midair and make them grab each other by their hands. Although I was thinking, like at the very end when he like pulls up and like keeps everybody from dying, like whoever is at like the middle of it that's holding on to him and has 6 other people hanging off of them, they would have just gotten their arms ripped straight out of the sockets.
No.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like in terms of like making that make physics sense, like he needed to have started slowing down much earlier, much more gradually.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want another Spider-Man snap incident.
The other thing about that is like he's like, oh, I'm gonna electrocute your hands so that you can't let go of these people. And it's just like, all right, so for the first person, I can see how you might be able to do that.
Yeah.
Once you're down to like the third or fourth person in line, how much electricity is going to have to go through the first person to get all the way to number 3?
That's the thing, is the first person had their arms ripped out of both sockets. Probably the second one too.
Right.
The third one was just like one socket. But the last person that got caught, once that electric turned off, they were the ones holding all of it, so they had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Like it's always the second one that gets it. So
I think they say like when you get electrocuted, the part that is actually bad for you is like when the electricity exits your body. That's where it like really burns you real bad.
Because it's like a current, right?
Yeah. So as it travels through, it's not so bad, but when it gets out, that's when it's a problem.
It depends on what what's conducting it, right? So like it's basically you're having all of that energy leave you, but while it's leaving you, it's heating up whatever you're in contact with, and that's what actually like burns you. Which is why like when they see somebody getting electrocuted and somebody else grabs them and yanks them off, it's the second person that gets that shock because they're the last one that it was going through, but they're the ones that's grounded. So
yeah, so listen in the chat if you've ever been electrocuted. What that was like.
Have I been electrocuted?
We haven't talked at all about the bad guys in this, or much. We have the Guy Pearce is Killian.
Guy Pearce.
Yeah. I love first scene Guy Pearce was a fucking long-haired, scraggly-haired nerd. That's the great look.
I always find it kind of interesting to see them driven to fix themselves. To see characters driven to fix themselves. Kind of like how what's his name? Tyrion Lannister's character in the X-Men movie.
Oh, right.
He resented himself so much. He wanted, like, there was a self-hatred there, and so much, in fact, that he did legislation. And Aldrin, I feel like, was very similar, and it's kind of interesting to see that. Like, wow, this guy did not get the support he needed. I mean, I get it. It was probably like the 80s, but he didn't get the support he needed to, like, cultivate him and let him know, like, yo, man, it's okay. Like, you know, you're battling you're like, was it polio? No, did he have a limb? Do I remember that?
Kind of limb and weird teeth. But
right.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't have eels to help him. Like,
yeah.
I get it.
We were talking about how Tony creates all his own problems. That's another one where his evilness was born because Tony ditched him on the roof. What were you saying, Roy?
Oh no, I was just jumping in on what Donut was saying. Like, I feel like it's a good thing, but like our more modern sensibilities for like what creates negative things in us, our appreciation for mental health and stuff like that. When you go back and you look at like movies and stuff where it's like, yeah, the bad guy went bad because he wasn't getting the help and support that he needed before he was bad. And you can see just truck tons of that in the older stories. And I think that's neat that they're showing it now, that a lot of these bad guys, something happened where they could have been good people and they made, bad decisions, or they didn't handle things the right way. And even though that's still on them, they have to own that. But I think it's neat how we're starting to show, like, yeah, but sometimes the heroes didn't do the hero thing that they should have done, and that opened this door. And that's, I think, is neat as a society and as media is showing us that it doesn't make you the bad guy for not opening the door, but like we all know Iron Man caused this problem again because he was being a jerk. And I think that's neat to see that being fully explored.
Yeah, I really like that you pointed out that like a lot of older movies tend to be like that. It was something that I remember realizing a while ago. Like half of James Bond's villains are handicapped in some way. Like they're handicapped, or they have like some sort of physical deformity, or they're in some way differently abled. And it's like you can see that in like all different kinds of franchises. Like Dick Tracy is just like, oh yeah, all my bad guys are named after a weird thing with their face.
Right.
It's like they're all named for something ugly about them.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, maybe if we're nicer to these people, they don't become a villain.
Right. Those older stories and movies and stuff, that's just like a shorthand way of showing that they're evil is by their deformities and things. They're born this way. They're born evil. And our good-looking heroes are that much more better than them.
I really like how he turned. So, like, Aldrin, I can't pronounce his name. Killian. And I think this is one of the plot points that kind of gets lost if you're not paying attention, because I caught it when I was watching it on over the weekend. Like, he's preying on people that need help, like, people that are down on their luck and that are like desperate, and like like the veteran that was in Tennessee that blew up. Like, he's like, it's fucked up, like, that he's exploiting them. And I was like, holy shit. Like, the more I watched it, the more I was like, oh, fuck this guy. But like, at the same time, I was like, yeah, fuck this guy. Like, it's not evil for its own evil sake. Like, we're being told this, like, and that's another reason why I have moved it up my rank too, because you get to see like the pathos of Killian, and like you see him being like such a remarkably demonstrably evil person, and it's not just because I want to rule. It's now he's like flexing his insecurities and like, you know, I have the strength, I have the power, now I can like get what I want and like fuck whoever can't regulate, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And I think too, like, maybe this is a little bit meta for the content of this Twitch stream, but I think it's neat how basically that pathos of like, well, now I have the power, so I'm going to do whatever I want, and it's neat to see like that's how the rest of us just are. It just so happens that most of us don't have the power to do too much bad, but like we've all been guilty of being like, this person's kind of unattractive, I don't want to talk to him, and ditching them. We've all been guilty of being like, oh, this person needs somebody to talk to, but I'm not that person. And I'm not saying that like you have to talk to every ugly person that needs someone to talk to, but seeing that there are times when it's like, we're not choosing to do the right thing, or we're not choosing to go the extra mile, and that's exactly what the bad guy's doing. And it's like seeing ourselves pushed to that extreme. Like, I don't know. It's like I've never felt like Emperor Palpatine was like a relatable villain.
Right.
Yeah.
He's just like Space Hitler for no reason. But like, I feel like most of the Marvel villains up until this point, I'm like, I don't think I would choose to do what you did, but I can see why you did what you did,
Right.
and how it made sense, and how like once that ball had gotten rolling, you had to keep going with it and keep justifying it. And it just, I feel like any superhero movie is only as good as its villain, and I thought he was a surprisingly good villain.
Yes. I agree with everything that you just said. The reason why you may have heard me typing in the background was I was trying to figure out when we were going to hit that villain that's evil, because the plot says that they're evil, and that's next week.
Next week. Oh, that's for Thor 2, The Lost World, Dark World. Jurassic Park 2.
God, I wish it was Thor 2, The Lost World. Thor and dinosaurs?
Yeah.
That sounds like a great movie.
Someone's going to have to mash that up and make a trailer. We only got Donut for a few more minutes before we have to say goodnight to him. Got some other stuff you got to do tonight, right? So, got any closing thoughts you want to share, Donut, before we say goodnight to you?
Surprisingly, I did not hate the child actor.
Yeah, that was fun. Because
He
it
was,
wasn't like, look how cute this kid is. It was
right.
mostly just Robert Downey Jr. making fun of him, which was fun.
And I was like, okay. At first, I like throughout the movie, I was like, all right, like I get it. Like, I think someone posted a GIF earlier about quips, and I was like, yeah, they kind of get a lot. They just throw it in because I don't feel the whole Marvel studio is confident in their scripts. But no, it first of all it fit because it was Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
And they made this kid like equally as jaded.
Yeah.
And like aside from like some of the lines, no, like he was just really, I don't know. Kid actors are very hit or miss, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to piece together what else was it about him, but I think it was I landed on it just feeling very genuine.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like a performative child performance. It was just like you're just like, all right, you're gonna shoot the shit with Robert Downey Jr. You're gonna shoot a potato gun, like
right. Pretty cool.
you win. You're gonna eat like candy in a bowl. You ready? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah. So
I feel like
Ty Simpkins, who
Oh,
Shane Black also had him in The Nice Guys. I don't remember.
oh,
That's
I
don't
right. That was
remember him
it.
in that.
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like with the kid actors, like a lot of times they're so impressed with the other people in the movie that they just kind of seem like kids in a toy store through the whole thing, or they're so impressed with themselves for being in that movie that they're like that extra precocious, where it's like, oh, it's your birthday today, and that either one can be cute, but it doesn't make you good. And this
Right.
kid was like right in the middle of like not being overly impressed, but also not impressed with himself. So I thought he did a great job.
I think also like the lines that they gave the kid, it was obviously there was a sort of beyond their years aspect to
Right.
some of the lines, but it wasn't so far ahead of what a kid should be like, where it was just like this rings false. It's just like, oh yeah, that's a funny kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Donut, I don't know if you need to go. Let's grab for a few more minutes. I don't know.
Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think the next time I see you, Ant-Man, I think, right? Did I
Sure.
request that?
Yeah, and then I think I'll get in touch with you in a couple of weeks, see if there's anything else you want to do. If you want to do Civil War, probably do that. I think we're gonna do a watch along for that. So.
Ooh.
If you want. Yeah, I'll
As
text you
long as
about that.
Yeah, if it's on a Monday, I could probably,
All right.
swing
Okay.
it.
Cool.
Good seeing you guys.
Donut, it was nice seeing
Stay in
you.
touch, but it's good to see you, Donut. Thanks for
Long
joining
time no
us.
see.
Everybody,
Take
check
care.
him out on Instagram and Twitter at the whole picture _ Right? Woo! All right.
That's true.
Hey, Donut.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So now Donut sound like stairs. So other bad guys in this movie, we had Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin.
Mhm.
What do you guys think about that whole thing? They didn't
That
have
was a fun bait and switch.
crazy Fu Manchu man instead of.
You know, I agree with the fun bait and switch, and I think well played on being like, hey, this character was a racist trope. So
Right.
we're going to treat him like the joke that he should be treated as and create a real villain. So I thought that was well played for the time. And now when they finally brought the Mandarin in for Shang-Chi, now it seems a lot less openly racist.
Right.
Um,
I'll be looking forward to seeing that one when we get to it. I didn't catch it in the theaters.
It's pretty
I
good.
think, yeah. I think something that struck me about this movie this time watching it is like you remember the Ben Kingsley character and how silly he is when he finally gets caught and everything. So we kind of forget that like the Mandarin, or at least like Killian through the Mandarin, like they're carrying out these suicide bombing attacks across the U.S. Like they show the map. There's like 10 attacks. Like it's actually like really fucked up. And we kind of think, oh, it's like a silly fake thing, but no, there's actually like real people getting killed. Like it's
And
like 9/11
executing
happening.
that dude on
constantly.
camera.
Yeah, like that's just like really fucked up. So, yeah, it's one of those things that everyone in this world is having to live through. Something that's way worse than 9/11 happening over a period of time like that.
Yeah,
everyone seems fine afterwards. No one ever talks about it.
well, like I think too, like I feel like it was really effective terrorism for like how that would actually mess with the United States. Like, and like I understand that other countries go through this
Right.
on the daily.
Yeah.
But like there's definitely like the fact that the terrorist incidents weren't like necessarily aimed at like landmarks. It was just about showing where they could get to.
Right.
Like that to me seemed more terrifying. Like as far as like a good villain plot, they kind of nailed that. So
I kind of felt like my watching of the movie, and I'm not saying that what Rory's saying is incorrect or anything,
I was
but
very drunk.
the way that I took it was like the suicide bombings were not being planned.
Right.
Like they used the idea of Mandarin as a terrorist for having the Ten Rings doing whatever other things that they were doing. They incorporated the suicide bombings into it, even though those were actually accidents that were happening.
Yeah.
Because there were people that weren't able to deal with the extremists.
Right. Just terrible name for a drug if you're trying to like name something not to be evil. Not a good name.
Yeah.
Like set up to be evil. Yeah, that just shows you how evil Killian is. Where he's like, yeah, our test subjects keep exploding. We better invent a terrorist to take responsibility for it, so we can continue to do these tests that are killing people like that.
I mean,
like I think that they were already doing terrorist stuff. It's just
Yeah.
it got folded in there.
Right.
because like I mean, I was very drunk, but like I felt like he was using the accidents and the actual terrorism that was intentional to like foster a situation where he could gain from people being afraid,
Right.
which is what all terrorists are trying to do. But I just felt that like the randomness of it and the like that it seemed more American terror to me than like the stuff I see in the news.
Right.
Like I just remember when there's that DC sniper,
Yeah.
and they were just shooting random people at everyday spots, and how it shut down a city for weeks.
Right.
And it was just kind of like, oh, that's what happens when an American decides to be a terrorist, is that they're actually hitting us where our psyche is, as opposed to a foreign power's psyche. And that's what this movie said or did to me. Whereas like, oh, this is like an actual American actually doing terrorist attacks against actual America. This is terrifying.
Right.
So.
And it's weird that people aren't so terrified about it. Like when Tony's walking around that small town, going to the bar and stuff, it's not people burning effigies of the Mandarin, talking about how we need to invade wherever it is that the Mandarin's from.
Well, it is a work of fiction.
Yeah. And it makes the movie very heavy if you really start dealing with all these things that they're bringing up. It's just kind of weird. They are bringing it up and they're not dealing with it.
Well, I think too, like
you just can't think about it too hard.
This movie took place in the before times when we were still under the impression that we were better than that to a certain extent.
Right.
So,
during the filming of this movie, the only effigies that we were burning were our own president.
That's true. They were more concerned about that. The president in this movie, though, Bill Sadler, that's pretty awesome that he got to be president.
He looks very presidential.
Yeah.
And the vice president,
Miguel Ferrer.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that they incorporated him into the villain plot.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering how much of that was like he is actively helping the villain or he's just passively doing it.
Yeah, it's unclear what his involvement is, because the only thing we see him do is just not call the president and let him know that the Killian's coming for him on Air Force One, which even if he did, there's nothing they could have done to stop him at that point.
Yeah.
It was like minutes before he showed up.
They definitely wouldn't have known that it was happening, because they would have just told Killian in the Iron Patriot armor, hey, you better watch out for Killian.
Yeah.
And then he would have been like,
Gotcha. And then still
Mhm.
just boarded Air Force One and killed everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys know the funny story about Miguel Ferrar though, is that he's cousins with oh no, I can't remember his name. The guy from ER. God, everyone.
George
Oh.
Clooney?
George Clooney. He's cousins with George Clooney.
Oh, I did
That's-
not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And he was making a movie like in the 80s or whatever, like back in his hometown, and George Clooney and the rest of his family came to like visit the set. He was like, "Wow, George, you're like the most handsome man in the world. You should come to Hollywood and be a movie star." And then he did. So,
Huh.
yeah.
I think
I'm
that
glad
might be
that
the
he helped
first
his
time.
family out.
Yeah.
Might be the first time your cousin gave you career advice and it actually panned out.
It's true.
Mhm.
You should generally not listen to your cousins when
Yeah.
it comes to career advice.
Well, one thing that I would be interested to know and disappointed to find out that it's never happened is how many times the vice president has actively plotted the president's death
In movies or in real life?
in real life.
Okay.
Like I will be disappointed if it's less than 3 times.
I'm sure that it is a non-zero number.
Yeah.
I want that to be true,
Right.
but
I'm sure the thing of when someone calls him and gives him some piece of information that he's like, if I don't say anything and the president dies, I'm sure that's happened.
That I feel like it is less possible with like security and wiretapping and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like I would feel like any registered phone to government officials that high up, they probably monitor everything.
probably some of the unregistered ones too. Like
Yeah.
and like yeah, I feel like if it's anything less than 3, I'd be disappointed because like I feel like there's a 50-50 shot with Kennedy and Lincoln that maybe they knew something. Like
Mhm.
maybe Kennedy didn't get a phone call that he needed.
Yeah.
It's like maybe you should put the top up today.
It's beautiful.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying that Lincoln got rave reviews on that play from his vice president. I'm just not saying that didn't happen.
Yeah, just free tickets or something.
Yeah. I bet your wife would love this. Go out and get some culture. It won't kill you.
You've been working so hard. You deserve a night at the theater.
Mhm.
So Rebecca Hall's in this as Maya Hansen as the botanist doctor lady. Yeah, I guess earlier drafts of the script had her being the villain instead of Killian, and that was kind of when she got hired on. She thought she was going to have a much bigger role in this movie. But she was in a movie called The Night House last year that was pretty good. She did a great job in it, but like so it was one of those ghost story movies where like half of the ghost stuff didn't really fit in the movie. But she did a great job.
She
It's
did.
mostly just
I
her.
went and saw
Yeah.
that. That was
Okay.
actually really good. I'm not 100% sure that it made 100% sense,
Right.
like logically, even like ghost logic-y.
Yeah.
But like on an emotional level, that movie made a lot of emotional sense.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty
She's
cool.
on screen by herself for most of the movie, and she does a great job. And they do a really cool thing with the ghost, where like you only can see it in negative space of like the space around things, which is really cool, but it doesn't necessarily make sense within the movie. But yeah, because they had a lot of cool ideas and they put it in another movie. I don't know, but she did a great job. Yeah, so go see The Night House and.
Well, if we're shilling for other movies, it sounds
Yeah.
like we're running out of things to say about this one.
Actually, I had one thing that I was gonna throw in about this one because like I feel like this one gets a bad rap. I feel a lot of people are like, oh yeah, Iron Man 2 and 3, and they kind of like toss them together.
Right.
And I think partly that's because they both have the same climax of a bunch of iron suits fighting. But during this rewatch, like one of the things that I feel like kind of detracts from what this movie is that everything else that comes right after it is like big team up movies, and everything is blended together. So this one, when you're looking at those, this one feels more like a throwaway movie than the ones that come after it.
Yeah.
Other than Dark World. Dark World also felt like a throwaway movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like once you go back and rewatch them, these movies suddenly get a lot better. And I know other people dislike the Marvel quippiness and the formula. I don't. I really like it. But I feel like I feel like it's like people diss the Marvel formula and then don't like this movie because it doesn't have enough of that formula in it. Like,
that's the thing, because like with Tony Stark, he can have the quippiness because he's kind of that kind of character. So it's one of the few movies where it works pretty well. That's the other thing I wanted to bring up is Iron Man movies. They are the only movies where you can call kids pussies, and also that threesomes happen. So I think there's some stuff in the first Iron Man where he's about to have a threesome with someone. I think it's like a deleted scene where he like leaves a bunch of ladies in bed so that he can go do science stuff. But it's the only movie where, and then this one where they've got where he goes into the Mandarin's house and there's the two ladies in bed. So yeah, in Iron Man's universe, threesomes happen, but I don't think anyone else's life that's the thing. Which I guess that's true for any rich people, right? That's where threesomes happen.
yeah, I mean, if I was rich, the first thing I would do is call kids pussies.
Yeah.
And as far as the sex thing goes,
right.
I mean, they said it in Office Space. Well, what's the first thing you do if you have $1 million? 2 chicks at once, man.
Yeah. Also, as we're wrapping up, we got the Stan Lee cameo in this one. It happens that he's the judge at the bikini contest.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, bikini babes. That's also another thing that only happens in Iron Man movies, I think, as far as the MCU is concerned.
And I think too, like I know Marvel has a tendency to be a lot more quippy, but I feel like they've done a pretty good job so far. And from my memory, they continue doing it, but I'll find out. That it feels like a lot of the quippy conversations and the type of quippy jokes that they make are still really in character. Like, it would be out of character for Captain America to be at a bikini contest.
Right.
But Tony Stark, not so much.
Yeah.
Like, it feels natural when Hawkeye and Black Widow are making jokes about the terrible situation they're in because they've been in them before, but their jokes aren't that funny. It's more like it's building the character dynamic between them. I don't know. So I feel like tonally this movie really nailed Tony Stark and what he's like when the chips are down, which we've never really seen before, other than the first movie when the chip was actually down.
Right.
That was his origin story. So
yeah, this one has kind of got a good like Empire Strikes Back arc to it.
Yeah,
like where he loses his armor and all that. No.
Well, it's the first time we see him do heroes without the suit. Which I feel like every suit character needs that one, what they do without the suit. Like, you get that right off the bat with Captain America. Even Spider-Man, they take his suit away before he fights the main villain. Like, I feel like that's an important thing to show for these characters that have a special suit.
Yeah. Especially because like his suit is like pretty much indestructible. So like I know a lot of people I've read like people complaining about this movie. I was like, this is Iron Man, but like there's barely any Iron Man in it. So, like And that makes it a much more interesting story. It makes the matter that much more when he does have the suit. But otherwise, he's walking
Iron
around.
Man's 2 words. It's
Yeah.
Iron and Man.
This one's got
This
a lot more
movie was
man.
Man. Tony Stark, Man.
Yeah.
And actually, there's one thing that I did also want to bring up now, because it's going to matter more later on. I feel like the Pepper Potts Tony Stark relationship in this is something that like we see all the time, but we don't see as much in comic books anymore. Where like they're fundamentally mismatched. Like, and the thing that she wants him to stop doing is his Iron Man shit, right? But he is Iron Man. And I think that like we see a lot of fundamentally mismatched relationships on screen because they make for good drama and good conflict. But I also think it's telling that you don't see a lot of like creative people and creative writers being able to write a character that, or two characters that are fundamentally matched. So like you don't see a whole lot of like really supportive relationships that have any meat to them. It's just kind of like, oh, these two get along, so we don't talk about them. And as we go on later in the MCU, there's a couple that I want to bring up. But even though I don't like their relationship, I think it's well written that this is a constant source of tension and it never resolves because they can't. Like the only time she's finally comfortable with him being Iron Man is when he's going to die.
Right.
So
she finally gets it. But like, yeah, it makes more compelling, dramatic movie watching. Just thinking about how, like, for Valentine's Day, my wife and I just had dinner and exchanged a few gifts, and it wasn't very stressful. But in movies, it's always a huge deal.
And just kind of like what we were saying earlier about like the bad guys, now we're starting to realize that like bad guys are mismanaged people, or something's gone wrong for a lot of the time, not all the time. But I feel like a lot of these relationships that we have all grown up watching on TV has like colored the way we look at our relationships in real life. And there's a ton of people that are with people that are fundamentally mismatched, and they think that level of stress and that level of sacrifice, that like, oh, the only way I can, prove somebody that I love them is to give up everything that makes me me. And that's a terrible message to be sending. So like, but I like how they're doing that in this, where it's like he keeps pushing against it, but he keeps going back to that thing that he wants. Like that's a good,
that's a really good observation, not just about this stuff, but just pop culture in general. Most of the media that we are exposed to, especially about relationships, it does have that sort of fundamental conflict between two people, and that's kind of why like I don't know how many LGBT people you follow on Twitter, but it's why they constantly point out, why do straight people hate their wife or husband so much?
Yeah,
it's because we see the we model our relationships off of people that should actually fucking hate each other.
Right.
When we think a certain amount of like aggravated tension is okay, and that, like, I know this is going to be a little bit preachy, but like there's a certain amount of self-sacrifice that you do for the people you care about, and that's a good thing. But like, if you're making self-sacrifice for someone you care for, that's good on you. But there's also the other part of the other person accepting it, right?
Mhm.
Right.
And like, it kind of makes you crappy if you're always letting somebody else sacrifice themselves for you. Like Captain America's a hero, but all of those other people that were not helping Captain America, they're just kind of wuss bags that were hiding behind somebody that was willing to be sacrificial, you know?
Right.
And kind of the same thing with Pepper Potts' character is like, she's willing to be married to the billionaire playboy that has all of the cool stuff. But once he actually starts doing some shit, it's like, whoa, knock it off. So like that's that fundamental mismatch that I'm talking about, where it's like they don't actually like each other. They like what each other do for them. And that's kids don't do that.
Yeah, I think one thing that about their relationship that I do like is that how because he's as the super rich guy always gets what he wants, and she's someone who's her role in his life has always been kind of been like tugging on the leash and setting up some boundaries and like, yeah, you can't do this, you gotta calm down about this or that or whatever, and like someone who's not going to be putting up with this shit all the time, and that's something that his character needs, is someone who's gonna kind of have their hand on the leash a little bit. I think that's what I appreciate about their relationship.
It's like the opposite of a manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah.
It's a very organized girl that tells you, hey, don't forget about stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you were, I don't think that she's a badly written character. I just sometimes I think she is, but I guess like he definitely does need that organization, and you need somebody that's going to tell him to do stuff. But like a lot of what I got out of this one was more along the lines of, and then the subsequent ones was the stop being Iron Man, and it's not that's where she crosses the line from like managing him like she did in the previous ones to now she's setting boundaries that's in his territory about what he can be or cannot be. And that's where I'm saying like that fundamental mismatch is.
Yeah.
So.
I think just in this movie, because they have the armor kind of symbolizing his emotional armor, he's sticking up to kind of not deal with his PTSD stuff.
Right.
Her telling him to get rid of it, that's the kind of that symbolic way of her trying to get him to deal with that stuff. Right? It does manifest its way in that way of like, yeah, your life's work, the thing that's most important to you in your life, you need to knock that off. Yeah, I can see how that rubs people the wrong way. So I only wrote down like 5 things in my notes, and one of them was War Machine 68 is Colonel Rhodes' username, not War Machine 69, and I wonder if they had to change that. They didn't change it much.
I never thought about that, but that totally sounds like the kind of thing where someone wrote a note on the script and said, we can't do this joke. So they're like, fine, 68.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that. And, Tony kills 5 people in this movie. I think it's hard to tell how many people he kills when they have the helicopters attacking his mansion. It's unclear how many people are in those helicopters.
Are you counting the extremist people as people?
No, I wasn't counting those guys.
Okay,
I think they were just blowing up on their own, right?
Well, I mean, they are blowing up on their own, but they're blowing up specifically because they're fighting with the Iron Man suits.
Yeah. But I think there were. I don't count that. I generally don't count the kills in the final scene when it's all the CGI goof flops.
Okay.
But there were the 3 guards.
I was
2 helicopter pilots. Yeah. Go.
I was just going to agree that I feel like suicide attacks against the hero don't count because like as soon as it was initiated, they were going to die.
Right. That's their strategy.
Different.
That's not his problem.
Yeah. Like if they came on and they were suicidal, but he didn't know that and he just shot them before it happened.
Right.
that's him committing. He's committing the murder in his heart, or in his arc reactor.
Right.
Mhm.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is that Rebecca Mader, who is she's Charlotte from Lost. She's in one scene as one of the ladies in Burqa, is the one that captures Iron Patriot. She's the redheaded English doctor, anthropologist or something. I'm lost. Yeah.
Oh.
Those are all my notes. You guys have anything else to talk about before we say goodnight?
The only note that I didn't touch upon in this movie is it feels a little bit too long, but nothing in the movie feels boring.
Yeah,
like I feel like there's definitely stuff that could have been trimmed, but it's nothing like Iron Man 2 where I'm just like, boy, I wish that you guys had taken a weed whacker to that whole movie.
Yeah. That's why I ranked it higher than Thor. It's just because like there's moments and like when a lot of times when they're out in Asgard where I'm like, I'm kind of not paying attention right now. But like in this, I think I'm on board for everything that's happening, even though it does kind of feel a little long. Were you saying, Roy?
I was just gonna say this. I think was the first Marvel movie that when somebody would ask me like, "Oh, what happened?" and I was like, "Well, first there was this, and then boom, and then like a little kid explaining a plot." Where I was like, "No, you guys nailed it." It did feel longer, but like it was one of those movies where like I came out and it felt like an actual roller coaster, where it was like, oh, I was ready for it to be done like before the final drop, but then that final drop happened, and now I'm tired, excited from watching the whole thing. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, this also reminds me in the final fight when he cuts Killian's arm off by having that wrist sword that pops out like a. I mean, it reminded me of RoboCop's data spike thing. So that's pretty cool. You never see him use that enough. You see him stabbing people.
I feel like and this is the same for all the media, but I feel like there is less sci-fi shanking than there really should be.
Yeah.
Like we all know that there should be a lot more like lightsaber quick draws, where it's just two people standing right next to each other. The first one that goes on wins. Like I was so mad at the first trilogy when all of those Jedi were busting out the same tired lightsaber moves. Like, did you guys watch Push yet?
No. Okay. I need to put that on my list.
It's on the list.
All right. So, like, this is a minor spoiler, but two guys have telekinesis, and like they're having a shootout, and they're both standing behind cover using their telekinesis to shoot at each other with the guns. So like the guns are like going through the space looking for each other, but both of them are hiding. And it's silly, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, if you could do that, that would make more sense than actually walking around shooting people. Right. Same thing with the shank of like, if you have something that can come out with stabbing power, like the guy from Assassin's Creed's been doing that since like before Jesus. Like, it's a good move. Like,
well, it feels a little bit cheating for Iron Man. The idea of him just stabbing people, though, it's like for some reason I'm okay with like all of the rockets and the lasers and all of the high tech stuff that he does, but the idea of him just like getting into a fight and then just being like stabbed you. It's just like, this seems a little over the top, don't you think?
See, that, I think. Sorry, go ahead, David.
I was saying he's in that indestructible suit, so if he's that close to somebody, he can also just punch them and it'll probably just break their skull open.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable thing to happen.
I guess that's kind of why I like it, is because it's like that ridiculous, like, I could just grab on either side and pull apart. Like, I'm strong enough to do that, but I'm not going to go through that effort. Like, it's kind of like when he's fighting the Hulk and like it just like has the jackhammer fist where it's
Right.
like that's stupid. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm not gonna move the hand back every time. Just robo fist him.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
I just love that of like the. I guess the thing that I like about it is like the amount of stupid that is still circulating in Tony Stark's head when he's building stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's just kind of like, yeah, I can solve the arc reactor, no problem. But like jackhammer fist, that's the best I
Yeah.
can come up with.
Right. So
It's
I would like to
I
see.
want to punch the guy, like a lot. Like, and I can't move my hands fast enough. How do I punch someone more?
Well, it's
Sounds
like
like punching.
you know he was walking through an arcade and somebody was like 52-point combo, and he was like, I can beat that.
So it does kind of feel like cheating in like Street Fighter when you get a high combo number, but it's because you're doing like E Honda's 1,000 slap thing where you're just pounding one button
Mhm.
over and
Uh-huh.
over again. It's like, I guess that's right. That's not really a 50-point combo.
I'm just saying though, if Iron Man like showed up and then his hands just flew off and just like karate chopped you while you were standing there, I'd be on board.
Yeah.
Like it'd just be like that's a stupid move, but he was just like, I'm gonna make you feel dumb with science.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, basically, if he's got the whatever metal his stuff's made out of, it can just go through anything, or it's not it can't be penetrated or anything. It has all of the tracking technology and stuff. Like he's got in the first Iron Man, he shoots like little rockets that like kill a bunch of terrorists behind the hostages and things. It's essentially like Yondu's arrow, where you can just shoot one bullet that goes through everyone's head, and not even
Mhm.
have to fight if you wanted to.
Well, like one thing that like it kind of bugs me with is like in the last two movies, I think he's like been coming up with the whole um, Iron Man suits that like fly off and grab you, and I've been really wanting him to create like the Iron Maiden suits where it's like he just points at somebody and it's an Iron Man suit that like comes out, jumps on you, and then doesn't do anything. You're standing there, you can't get in and out of it. Like that seems like something that like Tony Stark could really use.
Right.
Of just being like, oh, henchman, bam,
Yeah.
not anymore. But
I mean, really, all he needs is just like a pair of flying handcuffs. You know, that would be a lot easier and cheaper to make. He could make, dozens of those for the cost of one suit, and it would work just as well.
Yeah, and ever since he made that contraption that takes off Pepper Potts' clothes as soon as she walks in the room, just like his Iron Man suit, the flying handcuffs have been off the table.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
So.
All right, everybody. Next week we said Thor 2: The Dark World with I think we've got Mike Brown joining us. I want to say.
No
Okay.
shit.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Don't
Funny
quote me on that,
fact.
but yeah. So.
I just this last weekend, Tiffany and her friend were talking, and Tiffany brought up her friend from New York, and then her friend Chris was like, "I've got a friend in New York," and I was sitting there feeling like really trumped for a minute, and I was like, "I've got a friend from New York," and they didn't believe me, so I actually pulled up his Facebook page where it said that we're friends, and he's in New York, and I sent a picture to them. So tell that to Mike Brown when he's coming in. That
He's your friend.
Yeah.
he's my friend. And to say that in the podcast here, or the Twitch stream, so that I have more, because they're just like, well, you could have just friend requested this guy. Like, there's no picture of you and him.
It's true. I mean, just
We
because
gotta
you're friends
get
on
him
Facebook
to
doesn't mean you're
be
actual
like-
friends.
This is a shout out to my good friend Rory.
To go on his cameo. Yeah. Cool. All right, yeah, everybody. Next week, we're going to be covering Thor 2: The Dark World. That'll be my first time watching it all the way through without sleeping on a plane. So that'll be interesting. Follow us on Twitter at Opala for updates on what's going on, so you know who all our guests are and what we're watching. And also some bonus streams. We'll be doing things off and on. I've been the last couple of movies doing little research streams where I'm going over what I'm reading on Wikipedia and the videos, behind the scene videos I'm watching. So check that out. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. We're gonna ride out on the kiss. I think there's only one good kiss from Iron Man 3. This is it. See you guys next week.
See you next week.
Okay so far? You like it?
Is that it? That was the kiss.